Well, this question comes natural not just at the Met, but even at the Uffizi. And in fact, the initiative that Susan earlier mentioned to dedicate 2 exhibitions every spring to women artists at the Uffizi has to do, in fact, with the Guerrilla Girls, with whom I had lunch with 2 of them in Minneapolis when I had already been named director of the Uffizi. But over lunch they asked me, well, how is it in Europe? So exactly the question that is shown on the side. Is it worse? Is it even worse in Europe? And in fact, I promised them, or in fact, I got very curious myself to find out whether there are women artists in the basements. Actually, in the basements, there's no works of art in the Uffizi because of the flood risk. It's all, in fact, under the roof. So I went to look under the roof. Of course, there are very famous examples that we all know, that we all study, works of art exhibited at the Uffizi, such as Artemisia Gentileschi's Judith beheading Holofernes, which we recently reinstalled, in fact, just 2 weeks ago, and a new installation dedicated to 17th century paintings. And in fact, in the first room, this is really amazing, her Judith beheading Holofernes is actually not just shown together with Caravaggio on par, but she also gets at least equal attention. Now, yesterday, we at the Uffizi, we post 1 image every day on our Instagram account, and so far it is Caravaggio's Medusa, which has the record of the most hearts. But in fact, as of before this talk, the Judith beheading the Holofernes by Artemisia Gentileschi got 9,100 hearts. So if you add a little more, there's a real chance that we will overtake Caravaggio with Artemisia Gentileschi. And in fact, we have other great works by her also at the Pitti Palace. In fact, works that in the past we loved to contribute to exhibitions, but now they in fact attract so much attention by visitors who come out to seek them that it gets more and more difficult in fact to lend them. But little did I expect what I would find in storage. In fact, the Uffizi probably, arguably, has the largest collection of works made by women artists before 1850, maybe even 1860. There are more than 100 different pre-1850 artists, women artists represented in the collection, out of which only 5 different artists were represented regularly in the collection. And by the end of this year, with our reinstallations going on, I think we're going to be able to get that to at least 85. So that's going to be a big step ahead. At the moment, it's 10. So we're working our way over the next few months. The first exhibition in this series that we created last year, one exhibition dedicated to a woman artist of the past, one of the present, was in fact dedicated to Plautilla Nelli, the Dominican nun that was already famous in the 16th century. So she's a true rediscovery. It's not somebody who was only now discovered for the first time, but for the second time. Vasari himself mentions that that her works were so frequent in the houses of the Florentines that it wouldn't be possible to mention them all. She was extremely productive. She was also, interestingly, she was also not just a painter, but also a fiber artist, but we'll get back to that in a second. This was the first show, and the parallel show was dedicated to Maria Lasnik, Austrian artist who was also active in New York in the 1970s for a number of years. So we paired her with another artist that also was sent very strong messages about femininity, and we actually even had a portrait of her in our collection, because oftentimes people believe that the Uffizi will only have old masters, but in fact the Uffizi has one field where it continued to collect contemporary art since the 1650s, and that is self-portraits. So we do have a collection, a considerable collection of self-portraits by contemporary artists as well, and one of the most recent additions is Yayoi Kusama. This year, our pairing is Elisabetta Sirani for the 17th century, a highly important and again a very successful artist at her time in Bologna. She was in fact seen as an artist that was comparable for the 17th century to no one less than Raphael. In the 16th century, they had a very similar, actually, life in the way that both unfortunately died very young. Raphael when he was 33, she even when she was 27, but she was very successful with her paintings and also with her prints, differently from Raphael, who had Marco Antonio Raimondi, who to actually engrave his works. She did this herself. And there's one self-portrait that we unfortunately don't have in our collection, so we got it from the Pushkin Museum in Moscow as a loan for the exhibition, the self-portrait of Elisabetta Sirani. The other artist that we dedicate an exhibition to this spring is Maria Lai. And in fact, one should know that normally the Uffizi doesn't really do solo shows. So in terms of solo shows, we have Elisabetta Sirani and Maria Lai, two women artists, and we only have two solo shows of male artists this year. One is Pontormo and the other one is Leonardo da Vinci. So I think we have reached the 50% mark, parity already. And with Maria Lai, in fact, she certainly is not an artist that would be easily inscribed in the traditional Alfred Barr scheme of stylistic development, because she very much references the local traditions in Sardinia. She died in 2013, and actually this is the first show where we put together works from both different institutions in Sardinia that keep her heritage and put them on show. It's really interesting, her way to work with the threads also as a traditionally oftentimes feminine, stereotyped feminine activity, but it really goes back to local traditions in Sardinia, where she materializes the word, the letter, and then goes abstract from that. This year, actually, we also did a thematic show for the spring, again, to carry this over just the International Women's Day or the March, the Women's Month, to carry it over for a number of months until May and June. And this is an exhibition that we did outside of the Uffizi in Bagno Ripoli, a town which is easily reached, and it's dedicated to the role of women artists and also singers, composers, and really the first opera stars in the late 16th and early 17th century. Here we see the portrait of Marietta Robusti, known as La Tintoretta, because she's the daughter of Jacopo Tintoretto, the Venetian painter. And she doesn't show herself as a painter, but as a composer and as a musician. We don't stop with exhibitions. Exhibitions and acquisitions are important tools, but it's not all. We also did with Wikipedia an editathon. We got people, Wikipedians in here, and we got our art historians in our library, and we did one day to add information to Wikipedia on women artists which are represented in our collection. We did that actually together with Jane Fortune's AWA Foundation. So here you see a group of people who worked on this just a few weeks ago. And in terms of themes, to go back to the representational side of it, not just the woman artists, but also how are women represented in the arts, we will be showing another exhibition. So we will be adding yet another exhibition, a thematic exhibition in November, dedicated to violence against women. And we started off with this exhibition, The Rape of Polyxena. One of the excuses for this show is that we recently were able to purchase a model for this late 19th century sculpture by Pio Fedi, but we will have a conference and again a Wikipedia event to contextualize the question of violence against women, especially during times of military conflict. And well, that's not it, but that's the start. So we go further. Thank you.